My name is Larry Horn. We're here in beautiful Huntington Beach. This is one of my bikes. It's a 1955 Velocette. The model is a MSS, which is a 500cc single. This bike is not original. It has a lot of modified parts on it. I'm sure the Velocette people will point out a lot of things that are wrong on the bike, and I agree. I did not build this bike as an original bike. It's an MSS, so it's not like a Clubsman or a Thruxton, but here's what I've done to it. I've had the combustion chamber modified from a typical hemispherical combustion to a squash band system, and it has dual spark plugs. Bumped the compression up to about 9.5 to 1. Could have gone higher, but I want to run regular pump gas, and getting old enough now that I don't like to try to kick these big singles with high compression. I have obviously put Acheron rims and little different tires. These have got the Avon tires on them. The fenders are a stainless steel rear fender and a polished aluminum front. The electrical system has been converted to a 12-volt alternator system. It has a large 12-volt battery and the solid-state bridge rectifier voltage regulator. The carburation is Japanese Mikuni, and it's a 40 millimeter, big carburetor, big hole. The valves have been converted from the old hairpin springs to regular coil springs like modern valves have. And they've been enlarged, and the intake passage has been enlarged. And the cam is a little different cam on the camshaft too. So it all melts into this bike having a little more power than it originally had. But I'm a pretty big guy, so it compensates for my bulk. It handles very well. Velocettes have been known to handle good. They actually won the very first TT ever place. So Velocette's kind of an off, not real popular brand, but they were a little pricey back in their day. For a person to go down and buy a 500 single, you had to shell out a little bit more than you would have to if you bought a BSA or Triumph. And their marketing, I don't think, was that good, in their dealer support was not quite as widespread as Harley or Triumph or BSA, things like that. So, but they made a high quality bike. People love these bikes that own them, and I'm one of them. I very much like this bike. I've had 3 Velocettes. I had a Mac, which was a 350, which is a nice bike too. So, but this little 500 single is just my all-time favorite bike for just putting around. It will do freeway speeds, but I'm more comfortable doing around town with this bike than highway speeds. Although these bikes have been known to travel great distances. There is a Velocette club that meets every year in remote places, mostly in western United States. And a lot of the Velocette owners ride their bike to these meets or these rallies, and then it's 1,000 mile in the rally and then ride home. I've attended a couple of the rallies and did the 1,000 mile tour, but I've never ridden my bike to the site and back home. Haven't done that, but I'd like to do it one of these days. It's not out of the questions I could do it. The gas tank is it's called an Enduro. The other Velocettes have larger gas tanks for a longer range, and this one the gas tank's a little small. I don't know exactly what the gallons are, but it's over 2, under 3 gallons, and that just about encompasses the bike. That's the standard brakes, 4.5. It's got a chronometric speedometer, which means that it goes up in increments rather than the regular magnetic speedometer that sweeps up. This thing will click, click, click up and click, click, click down. Had to convert all the lighting systems to 12 volts. And that's a toolbox, oil tank, all the external oil lines, which is indicative of the older bikes. All the oil lines are external, whereas nowadays the modern bikes have all these oil lines internal. and the engine and transmission are separate from one another. They're not integral like modern motorcycles, and this is a 4-speed, and the shift pattern on this bike is up for first, between second and first and second is neutral, down, and then down to second, and down to third, and down to fourth, and back up. So my other bikes are a little different, and some of them shift on the other side. I have a couple of modern bikes that shift on the other side in a reverse pattern. So it's like chewing gum and breathing at the same time. Sometimes it gets a little difficult to remember which bike you're on and which side of the brake, which side of the bike the brake is on. That's the main thing. You keep reminding yourself that the brake on these old English bikes are on the left side and not the right side. So sometimes you'll come up to a stoplight and downshift inadvertently thinking that you're pushing on the brake. This is the alternator. It's an Alton alternator, which exactly fits in the hole that an old Lucas alternator fits into. And this area here is originally was a K2F magneto, and I have replaced it with a solid state ignition system. So the bike starts real easy, runs good. The downside is if that ignition breaks, it's broken. You don't sharpen the points or clean the coil or anything to make it rework. You're dead in the water if this thing works. So on long trips, I do carry an extra black box and extra pickups for this. So I cover myself in case the ignition breaks. These tires are not the Dunlop K70s. These are the Avon, and this is this one here is a Venom, and the back one is they don't make the Venoms anymore, so the back one is called I think it's called a Road Runner, but they're good tires. They hold pretty good. They're better tires than I am a driver. One of these days I would like to relocate the oil tank to back here because I have no air filter, and I don't like running this bike without an air filter, and I don't have an air filter now. So one of these days this oil tank I'd like to relocate back and then run an air filter here. Standard tooth sprocket on the rear and the front chain, so my gearing is the same. I can pull a little more now because I've got a little more horsepower, and so one of these days I might want to decrease the size of my rear chain sprocket or increase the size of my drive sprocket. I have the original Miller headlight, even with the little Miller sign on the top, but inside is a 12-volt bulb and not a 6-volt. The exhaust system is aftermarket, but it's the old fishtail, and what I did was it's a really loud exhaust system. So I made a baffle and put inside, and I don't think I've reduced the power too much, but it really did quieten it down because it had a snap to it, and sometimes it would set off car alarms, and I like it being a little quieter than that. I'm running a synthetic oil, Mobil 1 oil in this, and it has an oil filter inside the oil tank. I usually change that oil filter about once a year. I try to change the oil about every 2,000 miles, sometimes 1,500 miles, which I don't put a whole lot of miles on these bikes nowadays. I would say I put less than 1,000 miles a year on this bike, unless I do the rally, and then the main consumption of mileage is at that rally. So this bike gets used, but not like a back and forth to work bike. So I just take the bike out on occasions and try to just have a good time. It's a very, very fun bike to ride. It starts real easy. It has a compression release, so you use the compression release when you start the bike. And once it starts, it just idles, thump, 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 and just a lot of fun to ride around town. Most of the work that I've done on this bike, I do it myself. I did have contract work to modify the combustion chamber, but vast majority of this work I do myself, and I have access to a machine shop, so I make a lot of things for it too.